großes Interesse schon im Vorfeld erzeugt, und zwar europaweit. Europaweit auch deswegen, weil wir mit diesem Live-Chat Interessierte erreichen, wo immer Internet zur Verfügung steht. Und wir können so unsere Themen überregional kommunizieren. An dieser Stelle möchte ich daher auch ganz herzlich die Gäste im Internet begrüßen, hier im Medienzentrum Steiermark in Graz. Bitte bleiben Sie dran, diskutieren Sie mit uns mit, stellen Sie Ihre Fragen, Sie werden in die Diskussion regelmäßig mit einbezogen. I very warmly will welcome all the people in the internet to our Café Europa, Café Europe, here in Graz on behalf of the Hungarian government, Europe Direct, and the University of Graz. The statements of our topics, European integration at the West Balkan, will be in English and with a short translation to German. Questions can be either in German or English. So please join us live in the Internet. Stay with us. Ich darf nun auch ganz kurz noch eine Bitte, eine organisatorische Bitte an die Gäste hier im Saal richten. Bitte verwenden Sie das Mikrofon für die Fragen. Wir brauchen es für die Aufzeichnung und für die Ausstrahlung. Außerdem dürfen wir Sie noch bitten, weil wir fix installierte Kameras haben, Ihre Sitzposition nicht zu sehr zu verändern. Ich freue mich sehr, dass wir heute, obwohl in der Steiermark, das müssen Sie wissen, Semesterferien sind, wir auf so ein großes Interesse wieder gestoßen sind, und wir werden uns bemühen, das nächste Mal noch genauer mit Anmeldungen zu arbeiten, damit die Leute nicht stehen müssen. Ich darf und wünsche uns nun einen interessanten und spannenden Abend. Herr Professor Marco, darf ich Sie bitten, die Gäste vorzustellen und durch den Abend zu führen. The floor is yours.
Herzlichen Dank für die Begrüßung durch die Hausherrin. Auch mir ist es eine große Freude, heute Abend diese Zusammenarbeit des Landes Steiermark mit der Universität Graz mit diesem Abend zu beginnen und vor allem auch mit unseren prominenten Podiumsteilnehmern zu unserer Diskussion über Wiederaufbau und Versöhnung am Westbalkan oder in den Westbalkanländern. Wir haben in den vergangenen Tagen, in den vergangenen Wochen sehr dramatische Fernsehbilder gesehen über die Revolutionen, möglicherweise über eine neue demokratische Revolutionswelle in Arabien, beginnend in Tunesien, dann in Ägypten und nunmehr auch die Bilder aus Libyen. Und natürlich ist schon die Frage gestellt worden und auch zu Recht die Frage gestellt worden, was kommt nach der Euphorie des Sieges einer demokratischen Revolution? Und das erinnert mich leider auch ein bisschen an einen Ausspruch einer ehemaligen Bürgerrechtlerin aus der Deutschen Demokratischen Republik 1989, die dann etwas enttäuscht gesagt hat: Wir haben Gerechtigkeit angestrebt, aber wir haben den Rechtsstaat bekommen. Wie können wir friedlich unter auch dem Begriff der sozialen Gerechtigkeit als Prinzip zusammenleben? Das ist die zentrale Frage, gerade wenn es auch zu bewaffneten oder sogar kriegerischen Auseinandersetzungen gekommen ist. Was sind die Voraussetzungen, insbesondere auch für einen Auseinandersetzungen? Und vor allem, wie kann man es bewerkstelligen, dass das große Misstrauen überwunden wird, dass wiederum Vertrauen in Institutionen und Solidarität zwischen den Menschen zu zentralen Punkten werden. Experten heute am Abend auch mit uns haben, um genau diese Frage zu diskutieren. Wie sieht es aus? Was sind die rechtlichen Beamte der Chefanklägerin am Internationalen Gerichtshof in Den Haag, das frühere Jugoslawien, des Versuchs, zumindest individuelle Gerechtigkeit gegenüber Kriegsverbrechen, gegenüber Verbrechen gegen die Menschlichkeit hier durch Strafgerichtsverkehr die Wahrheit, die historische Wahrheit festzulegen und auf dieser Basis eben zur Versöhnung beizutragen. An der Universität Graz für Südosteuropa-Studien im Bereich der Geschichte und Politikwissenschaft und sozusagen auch mein Kollege, der mit mir das Zentrum für südosteuropäische Studien in Graz leitet. Natascha Kandic, keine Angst, kommt noch. Sie ist nur 20 Minuten in Verspätung. Also sie wird gerade am Bahnhof abgeholt und direkt
one of the issues in Southeast Europe, in the former Yugoslavia, is reconciliation. For me, it's some kind of third step, because the first one was, a normal country, more or less, at the end of the 80s. A country which was looking like being capable to join, to live as we did in the rest of Europe. And then as a journalist I covered the war, and I saw people fighting each other. Not so much by themselves, but due to a political agenda, most of it. And for me it has always been important to recall that I am very reluctant to have only an ethnic interpretation of the conflict in the former Yugoslavia. Then I left journalism at the end of 2000, and I worked for 6 years at the ICTY. It was a place where what I've seen before in the region was finally exposed to a large public, and those international trials on war crimes are, among other things, are designed to be exposed to the public in order for the public to understand what happened. The facts were established, not all facts, because everything is not dealt by the tribunal, but in the scope of the trials. And as a former journalist, it was also interesting for me to see whether we had understood and we had also seen things when you cover a war, you have a lot of propaganda, many clearance, and no access to many parts of the territory. That was very interesting. Now there is the third phase, which is, what do we do with all of that? We have a peace. We have progress, some kind of improvement and stabilization. We have some knowledge about the crimes, but do we have reconciliation? Reconciliation is something which is very concrete and very abstract altogether. It is an issue which is, for me, on which I'm questioning myself much more when I speak with the people in the region. It's complicated, very complicated. And due to this different position I had, one of the questions I'm quite interested in is whether the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, which was established in '93 and is still working and will be working until the end of 2014, had an impact on reconciliation. It has exposed the facts, established facts, not everything, and can it help to be accepted by the different communities in the region, and to help build common memories for the different communities and different parts which became communities. So it's not within one nation, with one country, it's across the border, which makes the process much different. Bring also their memories within the EU. Reconciliation happened across the borders in the EU, so that's maybe an experience we had. But at the contrary, So it's much more difficult.
I will say that I am in a slightly complicated, unusual position to be on one hand a member of academia and therefore an expert, and on the other hand, of course, part of the presidential team, newly elected president, or relatively newly elected last year President Ivo Josipovic. I'm his chief analyst, but here I will speak largely as an academic, so please do not take what I say to be any kind of official position of Croatia or of President Josipovic. Let me just say from the point of view of my personal experience then in this year that I've been in this double role as an academic and also an insider somehow and a participant in political affairs. We are now 20 years since the beginning of the conflict in former Yugoslavia, 2011, 1991. It's difficult to say when did it actually begin. And some would say it's earlier, some would say it's never ended, which is something I don't really share and I don't subscribe to. I think the history of the Yugoslav peoples, or peoples in Southeast Europe, have been very mixed. It's been a long history of cooperation, not only of conflicts. And so when we interpret the history, we should really emphasize the cooperation aspect and not to think that they're always fighting, they've always fought each other and therefore exaggerate and be almost deterministic and pessimistic that this will never be stopped. I think this is very problematic as an interpretation of history. It's been 20 years since, and I must say it's been a very unusual and very complicated, let me use that word, transition. Transition is a word that we have somehow forgotten pretty much in social sciences. But if we go back, we see that some of these transitions have been in Eastern Europe and Southeast Europe have been simpler than others. You had just political changes, for example, in some countries. In most countries you had political and economic reforms, very painful and very deep. In third countries you had a disintegration, the breakup of the state, which caused then chaos and anarchy and violence in many cases. And throughout Eastern Europe what we actually see in these 20 years is an attempt to re-establish the state and the rule of law and the validity of law in general. In some cases we have succeeded in that, in others we have not. In fact, we would be too optimistic to say that transition in this respect has worked in all countries of the former Soviet space, for example. In Central Asian countries, in Albania, you see certain problems in a number of other countries as well. I mean, there are still problems which 20 years on we are facing. I mean, who in Europe has not experienced, be they our panelists, one of three traumatic things such as dictatorships, various breakups of states, or occupation? I mean, there is no single European nation, apart from probably Iceland and Switzerland, maybe. Everyone else has in the 20th century gone through this. So I think the memories and experience and collective experience of Europe is very much applicable to that case. But let me just at the moment, and that's a transition from war to peace. Now the war has ended. I mean, conflict has ended in that hot war, if you want. Even Cold War has ended. But it hasn't completely ended in people's memories and in people's actions and the way they see the... It's enough to read newspapers wherever you go in former Yugoslavia, Croatia included, and maybe even in particular in Croatia. Every day there is a story about the homeland war, about the crimes, about skepticism about neighbors, and so on and so forth. On one hand. On the other hand, of course, it's important to remember tragical and dramatic experiences of our past.
An die Vergangenheit, aber nicht sozusagen hier nur in der Vergangenheit zu leben, sondern auch an die Zukunft zu denken und daher auch kooperationsbereit zu bleiben. Und Frau Hartmann hat auch schon darauf hingewiesen, dass es eben
die Zahlen sind rückgängig. Das heißt, das Bewusstsein über Kriegsverbrechen ist rückgängig in den letzten Jahrzehnten, obwohl es ein ICTY, das Haager Kriegsverbrechertribunal gegeben hat, obwohl es Diskussionen, Gesten von Präsidenten gegeben hat. Das heißt,